So yes, I want to carry on exploring the Diamond Sutra, which Kuslasara was exploring last week and Subhadramati the week before. So if you missed those, do catch up if you can. To my side here, just here, we've got an image of Prajnaparamita, who's a Buddha in female form. She's said to be, sometimes she's called the mother of all the Buddhas, and she's the perfection of wisdom. She personifies the perfection of wisdom. She has 4 arms, and 2 of them, the front 2, I don't know if you can see, are in meditation posture, and she's sitting cross-legged in meditation, implying, I guess, that the perfection of wisdom will arise through a transformation of mind, and meditation being in a way the sort of royal road to that transformation of mind. And then in her other 2 arms, in her other 2 hands, she's holding some texts, some books, which are the perfection of wisdom texts. They're the Prajnaparamita, Prajna meaning wisdom, and Paramita meaning perfection. They're perfection of wisdom texts. And the Diamond Sutra is one such perfection of wisdom text. So she personifies, you've got the Diamond Sutra as a text, and Prajnaparamita is in a way the personification of that text. And Bhante Sangharakshita gives a commentary on the Diamond Sutra and 2 other sutras in this book, Wisdom Beyond Words, which, if you can see, has on this cover, on the cover that I've got, the edition that I've got, you've got another image of this beautiful golden figure of Prajnaparamita. And yes, I want to carry on exploring the Diamond Sutra. So the Diamond Sutra is a translation of the Vajrachedika Sutra, which is literally the sutra that cuts through like a diamond. It cuts through like a diamond. And what does it cut through? It cuts through our delusions. It cuts through our ordinary, unenlightened, small consciousness, our small minds, our unenlightened, rather cramped and relatively unhappy minds into the perfection of wisdom. It cuts through, and that cutting implies, in a way, it implies something sort of a bit violent, doesn't it? And of course, Buddhism doesn't, it doesn't talk about violence. It's not violent, but it is challenging. It is challenging. It's meant to destroy all our notions of what's going on, who we are, what the world is, all our conceptual categories, all our ways of knowing. The perfection of wisdom will destroy them. It will cut through them, and it will leave us with, as it were, nothing to hold on to. So the Diamond Sutra, in a way, comes with a health warning. If you encounter the Diamond Sutra, be prepared for everything to be destroyed in a certain sense, so that the enlightened mind can break through, so that true fulfillment, bliss, freedom, love, true compassion, solidarity can break through. So I'm going to just read a paragraph from the Diamond Sutra. Tonight's talk is, as you know, called The True Nature of Giving, or The True Nature of Generosity. And the Diamond Sutra, it covers quite a lot of ground about the Buddhist path, but it keeps coming back to the same core theme, which is to do with the nature of reality, which is to do with the empty nature of reality. And by empty nature, it means beyond all conceptual grasp. And What the Buddha in the Diamond Sutra is teaching, well, he's talking to Subhuti. Subhuti, his disciple, not Subhuti, our president. And Subhuti is asking the Buddha about the Bodhisattva path, about the nature of who the Bodhisattva is, how the Bodhisattva behaves, and the nature of that path. And here the Buddha is talking about how the Bodhisattva gives a gift, how he gives a gift. And don't worry if you don't follow what I'm going to read. In a way, you're not meant to. But I'd like to start with it just to give you a flavour of the sutra. Moreover, Subhuti, a bodhisattva who gives a gift should not be supported by a thing, nor should he be supported anywhere. When he gives a gift, he should not be supported by sight objects, nor by sounds, smells, tastes, touchables, or mind objects. For Subhuti, the bodhisattva, the great being, should give gifts in such a way that she is not supported by the notion of a sign. And why? Because the heap of merit of that Bodhi being who unsupported gives a gift is not easy to measure. What do you think, Subhuti? Is the extent of space in the East easy to measure? Subhuti replied, No, indeed, Lord. The Lord asked, In like manner, is it easy to measure the extent of space in the South, West, or North, downwards or upwards, in the intermediate directions, in all the 10 directions all around? Subhuti replied, No, indeed, O Lord. The Lord said, Even so, the heap of merit that the Bodhi being who unsupported gives a gift is not easy to measure. That is why, Subhuti, those who have set out in the Bodhisattva vehicle should give gifts without being supported by the notion of a sign. So there you go, this rather, to us, very convoluted, sort of weird way of talking. And all the words individually, you kind of know what they mean. A gift, a sign, being supported, being not supported. But when you put them all together, as the Diamond Sutra does, it sort of makes sense, and it sort of is just on the edge of sense, sometimes tipping over into nonsense. And Bhante is just brilliant in giving his analysis of the sutra, sort of line by line. And he comments on that paragraph that I've just read. Now, I'm not going to be able to, I haven't got time to talk about everything in that paragraph, although you can ask questions later. After tea, you can ask questions if you want to about other bits or anything that I say. But I particularly want to focus on the giving of a gift, the giving of a gift. So in Pali and Sanskrit, generosity is termed dana. And Bhante says that this virtue of being generous, of giving, is the basic Buddhist virtue. He says that it's the virtue sort of without which you can hardly call yourself a Buddhist. You can hardly call yourself a Buddhist. Well, sometimes the path, perhaps a really well-known formulation of the Buddhist path from here to enlightenment, from wherever we are to enlightenment, is the threefold path of ethics, meditation, and wisdom, sila, samadhi, and prajna. Well, sometimes a fourth stage is added. Well, actually, it's a preceding stage. So instead of sila, samadhi, prajna, ethics, meditation, and wisdom, you have dana, sila, samadhi, prajna. So you start with generosity, then you have ethics, meditation, and wisdom. It's said that what Bhante says is that if you don't know what wisdom is, in a way you don't need to kind of worry. If you don't know what the perfection of wisdom is, prajna is, you can still be on the path. You can still be practicing the Dharma. If you are meditating, samadhi, which is the preceding stage. But if you find that you can't meditate, well, you can still be practicing the Dharma. If you're working on your ethical life, if you're working on the precepts and trying not to, particularly you're trying not to harm and you're trying to respond from metta to the world around you, well, metta and truthfulness and all the precepts. But sometimes we can't even seem to keep the precepts. Rather embarrassingly enough, after 2 and a bit decades of practice, I don't always manage to keep the precepts. And what Bhante says is, well, if you can't manage to keep the precepts perfectly, if you can't meditate perfectly, and if wisdom just feels a long way off, well, as long as you're generous, you're on the path. If you're being generous, the whole of the path is open to you. I guess, the corollary to that is that if you're not generous, if the heart is closed, if the fist is closed, if there isn't any, if we're just tight-fisted, the path doesn't open up. I suspect that if we are tight-fisted, tight-hearted, small-hearted, then in a way the rest of our efforts at growth towards enlightenment will be being thwarted somewhere. So that's why Bhante calls it the basic Buddhist virtue, dana. But a while back, some years ago, I was thinking that, well, you've got that threefold path, then you've got this fourfold path of dana, sila, samadhi, prajna. Actually, I think you could say that there's a sevenfold path. And this isn't canonical, this isn't traditional, this is just a Jnanavaca ism. So don't quote it as if it's the word of the Buddha. It's not. It's just a wee fancy that I came up with. And the sevenfold path is dana, sila, dana, samadhi, dana, prajna, dana. Dana, sila, dana, samadhi, dana, prajna, dana. So what I'm trying to illustrate there is that you could think of the path as a progressive journey into ever higher states of generosity, ever more lofty states of generosity, until you end with the dana that comes after prajna, which is what the Buddha, I think, is referring to in that paragraph from the Diamond Sutra. He's referring to how a bodhisattva, an enlightened being, or somebody who's near as anything to enlightenment, how they would practice generosity. But we're not, or I'm not anyway, an enlightened being. So my generosity, to the degree that it is generosity, is at a lower level. And so I want to explore this path of giving, of generosity, starting from, as it were, the basic Buddhist virtue, and then moving up this path. So I think one of the things, dana, let's start with dana at the start of the path. One of the things that I think, one of the reasons why I think the path starts with dana is that when we give, we instantly form, at least for a moment, a sense of connection with someone or some group or some being. We instantly, just in that act of giving, we experience a moment of connection. Without that, if you imagine never giving anything, I don't know if you can imagine that, never having given anything. I mean, that to me just feels like an inhuman state. Imagine somebody, I can't imagine, that they've never given anything to anybody, that their heart, their fist, their mind is so interned that they never give. And I don't just mean giving in terms of money or material goods, although I do mean that as well. But dana would include giving attention, giving kindness, giving your time, giving your energy, reaching out to somebody in some way. That is also giving. And imagine not ever having done that. I think it would be like a state of madness, a sort of psychopathic state. You get this in even little babies. They want to, they might be eating something and then they want their parent to eat it. They give, don't they? They give. There's or they. Well, my sister was just she's become a grandmother. I've become a great uncle, and Dhruv, my little great nephew, she was playing peekaboo with him, sort of peekaboo or something like that, and apparently he now does it back, tries to make her laugh with closing his eyes and then opening it and making a sound, opening them and making a sound. But even that is a moment of connection. Do you see what I mean? And a sort of sense of giving at a very, very basic level. So I think it overcomes our sense of isolation. I think it's so important when, in a time when, so many of us are still physically isolated, that we feel connected in one way or other. And of course we're trying to do that through Zoom and da-da-da-da. But one way of feeling connected, which I'm sure you have experienced, I'm sure all of us have experienced, is that when we give, we feel connected. And it overcomes our sense of isolation, of being the only one. It overcomes, I think, our tendency to think of ourselves as a consumer as well. Our modern consumer society, which seems to be getting more and more, consumerist, is, what it does is it just focuses the attention on self-gratification, doesn't it? It sort of, you sort of just end up wanting, and everything around you, particularly if you look at the internet, is sort of enticing you to want more, and it's so seductive. I feel seduced by it myself. So giving overcomes that. But what are the drawbacks of giving at this basic level? Maybe we can talk about this more. One of the drawbacks is that if there's giving but there isn't a basic degree of ethics, of sila, then giving can be somehow self-motivated, self-centered still. At its worst, for example, somebody could give a bribe and it's all about themselves, really. That would be an extreme case of giving without an ethical basis. But at a more subtle level, sometimes we give because we want to be liked, or, patrons of, arts projects give because they might want their name on a plaque, and they want to be associated with generosity. Some philanthropists might want that. Not everybody, of course. I'm just trying to illustrate that giving alone, giving itself, the act of being generous, doesn't guarantee that you're acting unselfishly. So then that means that the next stage of the path, sila, is really important. Ethics. Because ethics is trying to say, no, we're being generous because we're trying to work on our minds, and we're trying to align ourselves with the nature of reality, which is to do with connectedness. So if we're a Buddhist and we're trying to practice ethics, and you're trying to practice the precepts, then your generosity is contained within a larger altruistic kind of framework. It's less likely to become self-centered. Now, of course, it still might, but then you've got a framework to confess it. And you can say, look, when I gave you that beautiful jumper, actually, I don't know, somehow it was tainted with self-reference or something. Or actually, I was just trying to get rid of that jumper that somebody had given me, and I didn't really like it. You can practice confessing the mixed motive, maybe not to the person that you give the gift to, but with somebody else. We can confess the more self-centered part. But ethics itself can become self-referential too. Sometimes we can get very pleased with how we're practicing the precepts, and we can start to sort of hold the precepts very tightly as if they're rules and or commandments, and that's not the spirit of Buddhist ethics. Buddhist ethics is trying to say, look, this is how a Buddha would behave naturally. So we train ourselves in these precepts. So we're not trying to say they're commandments that are given by some creator who will punish us one way or t'other. But if we're somehow, particularly if we are suffering from guilt or low self-esteem, it's very easy to start taking those ethical precepts as rules that then we can, feel bad about for not being more perfect. So I think we need a counter to that, and that's where I think the next stage of the path comes in. So far we've had dana and then sila. The next stage then would be to give on the basis of that ethical, altruistic practice. But then when that becomes literalized, if it becomes literalized, to the extent that it becomes literalized, I think we need meditation. We need samadhi, we need meditation to be directly working on our minds. If we're cultivating metta, we naturally start to feel empathy more easily with other people. We naturally start to feel, connected with the world around us. We naturally start to also notice what's going on in our own minds. We start to become more mindful, more aware of our own minds. And then we can tell when our motives are mixed, when there's some sort of self-centeredness going on, and we can try and address it, we can try and confess it, we can try and not act from it. So samadhi, I think, is an essential refinement that's needed if ethics isn't going to just turn into a literalism, and if our dana isn't just going to be based on rules. I think samadhi is kind of needed to make it more genuine, more spontaneous, more creative, more about the other person. I don't know if you've ever had people give you something that is totally inappropriate, like a birthday gift, that they sort of think is good for you, but really it's completely inappropriate. Like the last thing that you want, and you just open the present and you think, thanks. Thanks for this jigsaw puzzle that I don't know what I'll do with, sort of thing. It's sometimes what happens is that people are being generous and they are being ethical, but they're not really in tune with you and what you need or what you like. So I think samadhi helps us become more attuned to the other person, to genuinely become aware of them as not just an object in our world, but as a subject in their own right, who is different from us, and who we're trying to cross this chasm of self to reach out to another human being. So I hope that meditation, in your experience, is helping to do that, particularly the metta bhavana, not just the metta bhavana, actually mindfulness as well. I hope it's helping you to do that. So I want to come on to two things. One is my own sort of self-centeredness. Just before I came to give this talk, I just had a nice meal. Seb had cooked a nice meal, a beetroot kind of thing. I've forgotten what he called it. He won't forgive me for that. Anyway, a beetroot thing, and then some rhubarb and yogurt, which was nice. And then on the table, I don't know, just a kitchen sort of side table, there was this bag of vegan marshmallows, which I'd been eyeing all day. I mean, I'd seen this morning and thought, oh, I want a vegan marshmallow. And I thought, no, not before breakfast. You can't have a vegan marshmallow before. So I'd had my breakfast. And actually, breakfast was delayed because we had a plumber in and there was no water and da-da-da. And then throughout the day, I've just been too, caught up, and I sort of forgot. Anyway, after dinner, I eyed this bag, and Jnanavaca, who I live with, was just picking up this bag of vegan marshmallows. And instantly, there was a sort of sense of me. I must have a vegan marshmallow, even though I just had this very nice meal. And, I was just about to give a talk on generosity. Anyway, fortunately, he had one. And I sort of immediately felt this inward frown, thinking, I hope he hasn't had the last one, because the bag was definitely looking seriously empty, and not in the dharmic sense. And fortunately, there was one left, and I just grabbed it, really, and then I ate it. And then I looked at the packet and thought, they're M&S plant kitchen, whatever, vegan marshmallows. And I just thought, I wonder if I can get these on Amazon. And delivered to me, just. And so I'm just about to come and give a talk on generosity, and I find myself having a look on Amazon, or online anyway. And they were on Amazon. I didn't buy them. Anyway, that's a wee example of how after many, many years of practice, this instinct for me is still very strong. Generosity is a way of overcoming that. Empathy is a way of overcoming that, but our empathy needs then to be acted upon. Our metta needs to be acted upon. So yesterday, I was glad to say I did act upon the generous impulse, which was coming from a degree of solidarity or empathy or metta. And that was because I found out yesterday that 2 more order members in India had died this week of COVID. And in total, 7 order members have died of COVID within the last fortnight in India. And, as you know, in India, the second wave is way out of control. And we have many members of the Sangha, mitras and order members and their families in India, in probably some of the worst affected parts of India, in Maharashtra, who are in desperate states. And so yesterday I found out about an urgent appeal, which I'm going to also ask you to contribute to if you can, an urgent appeal for money. There are people Well, I was told this morning by an order member who lives in India. I was in a meeting with him, Amrutdeep, and he was saying that only 1 in 4 people who need hospitalizing are getting a bed. And I was reading this morning that sometimes people are 2 to a bed, even when they get a bed in hospital. The other 3 out of 4 are basically told to go home and die, where, of course, often people are living in very cramped conditions, and others are going to get infected, the whole family. Well, Amrutdeep was saying that when one person gets infected here, the whole family gets infected. Social isolation, social distancing, isn't practicable in an environment that's as densely packed as an Indian city. It's just not possible. I heard this morning from Amrutdeep of a family that he heard about, where there were 5 adults and 2 children in the family. Indians live in extended family units, and all 5 adults have died, leaving just the 2 kids. And I can't imagine, when I hear stories like that, what it must be like to be living in such conditions. And then other people who might not be yet sick, but might have to self-isolate, or because of lockdown they can't go out, they're not able to work. And many in our Sangha and many in India rely on daily wages, and so if you can't work, you can't eat. So yeah, I was just very, very moved and sobered hearing some of these stories, and gave I gave a few £100, £500 yesterday, to this appeal. I'm told that if you give £60, that will provide food for a family for a week. And so if you can give at the end of this, or Danny might put a link on, but also at the end of this I'll remind you. What I'm trying to say is that I think when we listen to stories like this, I don't know if we're practicing, even if we're not practicing, we want to do something. The heart opens. And if we are practicing, if you have been doing metta practice, and the heart opens and you want to serve, you want to give, you want to help. And that's as it should be. And this week at the LBC, in fact, what we're going to do is all the dana that comes into the LBC. We've been asking for dana, as you know, consistently throughout this pandemic. All the dana that comes to the LBC this week is going to go to India, to the Abhayaratna Trust. Abhayaratna Trust is to help people in the Sangha in India, particularly in the order in India, and their families. And what the LBC is going to do as well is give the dana that comes into the LBC for this week, it's going to do some match funding, and up to £2,500 of match funding will the LBC will give on top of that, if you see what I mean. I was reminded of an incident that I've talked about before, so forgive me if you've heard me talk about this before, but it just feels excuse me, it's a very important story for me, and I hope you'll see why. I was ordained in India um, and so this was in 1999. I went out there to get ordained, and when I was, well, at that time I was working for the LBC as the fundraiser here for Vajrasana, albeit the first phase of Vajrasana. And so on my ordination retreat, or after my ordination retreat, there was this sort of order gathering, and an order member there called Vivekabhadra talked to me. He was talking to me, and we were getting to know each other. I didn't know him at all, and we were just sharing experience of our lives together, and feeling that, though continents and so much experience divided us, we were brothers together in this beautiful order that I'd just joined. He was more senior than me, and is more senior than me. Anyway, he said, "What do you do, Jnanavaca, at the LBC? What work do you do?" And I said that I was a fundraiser, trying to raise money for a new retreat centre for the LBC, for London Buddhist Centre. And he said, "I want to give to your project." And I was embarrassed, and I thought, sorry, I wasn't trying to fundraise. I was sort of embarrassed, and he was insistent. He said, "No, I want to give to your project." And I said, "Well, why do you want to give, Vivekabhadra?" Because I knew that he didn't have very much money, and we were trying to raise, well, at that time, the retreat centre that we ended up buying cost £400,000. We were trying to raise £100,000 of that, or I was trying to raise that. And, I said, "Why do you want to?" "Look, it's fine. Just your generosity, just that generous impulse moves me. You don't need to actually give." And he said, "No, I want to give." And I said, "Well, why do you want to give, Vivekabhadra?" And he said, "Look, first of all, I like you, and if I give, I feel a connection with you. It honours that connection. I want to be connected with you." And then he said, "And I want to be connected with the London Buddhist Centre. I'll never go to your retreat centre, which is Vajrasana. I'll never go to Vajrasana. But if I've given to that project, I feel I am connected with it. And I want to give because of that." And then thirdly, he said, "I want to give because I'm a Buddhist, and that's what we do." So that, for me, was a teaching. It was a teaching. I'd just been ordained, and it felt like a gift that he'd given me in that teaching. And then he said he could give. He thought if he saved, he could give the equivalent of £1 per month, and he'd like to do that for 12 months. And I just feel moved now, even reciting that story. Anyway, so I want us to be able to give to people in India who are dying and who are starving and whose families are bereaved. People don't have money for funeral costs, apparently. I think we need to give because we're Buddhists. That's what I'm trying to say. Not because of all of that as well, because it will help, but because it connects us. We're a connected Sangha. We're a Sangha, an international community, a Buddhist community, trying to exemplify what it is to practice the Dharma in the modern world. And that's why we need to give. Now, of course, what happens is, and this is going back to the Diamond Sutra, that when we give, when we are generous from a genuine sort of altruistic place, we receive the fruits of that. This isn't why we give. The Buddha's trying to make that point. It's not why we give. It's not because we want something back, but we do get something back. And what we get back is a sense of connection, and our minds expand from this tightness of self-clinging to a more expansive, beautiful, fulfilled state. And that's priceless, because it moves us in the direction of true freedom, of true fulfillment. So I've covered sort of dana, sila, dana, samadhi, and then giving again dana from the basis of samadhi, of working on our minds. And then I want to come to prajna. I don't know what time it is. Again, I'll talk to her a little bit more and then we'll have a cup of tea. I want to come to prajna. So what the Buddha's saying in the Diamond Sutra is that a bodhisattva gives without any support. What he means by a sense of support is that he gives without any sense that there is a separate giver or a separate recipient or something called a gift. Because a bodhisattva is in touch with the perfection of wisdom. The perfection of wisdom points to a state of mind, a state of consciousness, where we see that this world, this phenomenal world, with its objects arranged in time and space, its beings seemingly separately arranged with physical form in time and space, which we take to be reality. The perfection of wisdom sees that that is only a provisional reality. It's not the deepest level of reality. It's not the deepest truth. It sees that what we call beings and bodies and form and matter and time and space are just conceptual categories on something going on that is indefinable and cannot have boundaries, doesn't have any edges to it. No being has an edge. Mind doesn't have boundaries. It's not bound by the physical body, but even the physical body doesn't have complete edges. When I eat that marshmallow, it's now part of me. It was a marshmallow sort of out there. It's now ingested. It's not. Nothing has ultimate separateness. The perfection of wisdom sees, the bodhisattva who sees with the perfection of wisdom sees that all our ways of conceiving, all our ways of knowing are really abstract constructions that we impose upon experience. That in reality, in reality at its sort of most fundamental, all those abstract constructions fall away. And there's no way of saying what's going on. There is a knowing, there is a sort of knowing, but it's not a knowing that can be put into conceptual terms, or at least not accurately put into conceptual terms. You can't say that I exist as an entity, as a being. You can't say that anybody exists as an entity, as a being. There is something happening, but it's more of the nature of flow. Even the word flow and process, which is sometimes how we talk about the nature of reality, isn't enough, really. It doesn't go deep enough, because prajna paramita, the wisdom of prajna paramita, would see that even time and space are fabrications, they're constructions that our unenlightened mind imposes upon experience. So if time is a construction, then I don't know what flow means, because flow, and if space is a construction, what does existence mean? And even flow, what does that mean? It's deeply, deeply mysterious, and yet it can be experienced, and that's what's so important. It's not a metaphysical abstraction. It's trying to point to a lived reality that Buddhists for generations, for centuries, have experienced since the Buddha. He experienced this lived reality, and he said that it was the end of suffering, and it was bliss, and it was freedom. And out of that wisdom, what happens is that there's just a sense of solidarity. There's just a sense of solidarity with everything that is. Although even to use the language of is wrong, and to use the language of things is wrong. So the perfection of wisdom, the prajnaparamita, what it does is it uses ordinary words, and it uses things like concepts like gift and giver and support, and it uses questions like why, but it doesn't follow the normal rules of logic. So you get this sense that you can sort of understand the words, and sort of they're not holding together, and that's deliberate. That's saying something about how reason, conceptual thought, can only get us so far, and then there's something transcendent that arrives, bursts into our experience. This is the wisdom that cuts through all delusion. It bursts, as it were, into our experience. And then, I don't know, the Bodhisattva is, they wouldn't think that they were being generous. They wouldn't think that they were giving anything. Even if they gave their own life, and even if they laid down their own life for somebody, I don't know, they wouldn't be self-conscious about it. Bhante talks about how if somebody at dinner says, could you pass the salt, and you pass the salt, and afterwards they say, oh, thank you for passing me the salt this evening, you'd think they were a bit, they were making a bit of a big deal of nothing. Well, a bodhisattva would feel like that even if they gave their own life. Do you see what I mean? It would be natural, spontaneous. Somebody needed their life, they would give their life. It would be that natural, that spontaneous. So if wisdom doesn't result, if prajna doesn't result in that sort of spontaneous empathy and connection and generosity, then really it isn't wisdom. And I really want to emphasize this, because in modern Buddhism there is a tendency, particularly in our Western consumerist individualistic culture, to think about wisdom as if it were a possession of mine. I want to be a bodhisattva. I want to be wise. As soon as we do that, it's not wisdom. And as soon as we do that, we've cut ourselves off from others and from this spontaneous connection and the love and the generosity that flows from that. So it can't be that wisdom is a possession, an individual possession. We can't, in a way, succeed at this path. That's part of the paradox. If you want to gain enlightenment, in a way, you won't. Now, what do I mean? You won't have it as an individual attainment. You can't. It arises when we, you, I, get out of the way, when we forget ourselves, and we realize that in a way there's nothing fixed and essential that we to hold on to as me, as self. And then when we can give, just as you would pass the salt, give everything to beings, that would be a test of the wisdom, if you see what I mean. That would be a fruit of our practice. And the world would benefit if more of us could be bodhisattvas. If I could be a bodhisattva, if you could be a bodhisattva, the world would benefit. And this transformation of mind that would occur is perhaps the greatest gift that we can give ourselves and give the world. So maybe I'll end there. I just want us to create a sangha, even if it's tiny, and our sangha is tiny. I want to create a sangha. I want us to, in a way we have created this sangha, but I just urge you to continue this culture that we've got in the sangha of giving. It's a beautiful culture where generosity just flows, and I really want to urge you to do that. And in particular, tonight, I want you to, and this week, urge you to give for our brothers and sisters who really, really need it in India. Of course, I am aware that people all over the world are suffering from COVID. Let's just focus, maybe next time we'll be able to focus on people elsewhere, but for this week, let's just focus on people in India and our Sangha in India, and show our solidarity with them, and show that actually we do, even if we are not enlightened and don't really understand what that means, that we're striving to feel this solidarity. We're striving to open our hands and our hearts, and we're doing that from not from a rule-based perspective. We're not doing that from a perspective of what will I get back. We're doing it because we want to express our solidarity. We feel this connection with others. We want to express our solidarity, and in the words of Vivekabhadra, because we're Buddhists. So I'll leave it there.